Thank you guys for joining me. I know you guys are busy, and just to talk about, the anti-racist efforts happening right now. I'm going to start with you, Sabrina. Just with you being a co-founder of the Anti-Racist Saints group, and you being one of the people who helped craft the letter to send out to alumni and to the school as well. Can I get you to say, why did you feel the need to start this group and to make sure you were part of helping craft this letter being sent out?
Sure. So we came together in early June. It was during the height of the George Floyd protests. Everyone was reflecting and trying to take action on combating racial injustice in this country. And so I felt that it was critical that Nansemond-Suffolk Academy also has an active role in this dialogue. And that feeling came from my own experience at the Academy, what I witnessed, but also recognizing the fact of why the Academy was started in the first place. And that was in the 1960s after the Brown versus Board of Education decision, and that it had an active role in resisting desegregation of schools. So we just felt that we needed to push this conversation at the Academy, that we needed to come together and write some type of letter and outline steps that we wanted to see as alums taken at the institution.
Mm-hmm. How many signatures did you guys receive, and who signed it? Was it just only alumni? Was it parents as well, former teachers?
So when we released the letter on June 12th, after 3 days, we gathered about over 600 signatures. 500 of them are from alums, and the rest are from community members. Right now, I think we're up to 730 or so signatures. And so that's including alums, community members, parents of alums, even former teachers, former board members as well.
Wow. And I guess, Wade, I'm going to ask you. Sabrina says that you are just extremely knowledgeable when it comes to the history, the founding history of this school. Can you talk about, I'm hearing that people are calling NSA segregationist academy. Can you speak on the founding history of it and why people are calling it a segregationist academy?
Sure, I can. Part of my process here has been to try to learn more about the place where I'm from. And after graduating from the school, I actually didn't know much about the school because the way that it describes its own history is quite different from the reality. So I took it upon myself to learn what a segregationist academy is and what they are. And were about 20 or so founded in Virginia. Following the Brown v. Board of Education ruling in 1954, the Virginia state government, including the governor and the democratically controlled legislature, took it upon themselves to resist the desegregation ruling through something called massive resistance. And the way that played out was through a legislative process that resulted in a public referendum. And the public referendum passed, allowing the state to amend its constitution to allow state money to go towards private institutions of education. And what they did was they offered tuition grants, and these are state grants to anyone who did not want to send their child to an integrated school. They could choose not to. And so they were given state money to avoid integrated schools. White parents took their children out of integrated schools using these tuition grants. And what they did was they founded new schools, and these are called segregation academies. And Nansemond-Suffolk Academy is one of these. And in our area, there are several others that were founded from 1959 through to the end of the 60s.
How, and sorry, Sabrina, I see your question here. I don't know how I can go back and check that if there's a password to join. Do you guys not that savvy with this, with Zoom?
I don't think there is a password.
Yeah, I don't think there was one. I don't know why Jay was.
Okay. So Wade, I want to go back to when you're doing your research with this, was it listed somewhere that Nansemond was a part of this?
So everything I'm gathering, I'm doing from my laptop in New York. And this is all publicly available information. The historical record on segregation of academies is quite well developed and available online. Specifically, though, there are documents that we've found from the Commission on Civil Rights, letters from the commissioner, the U.S. Commission on Civil Rights in 1968, naming Nansemond-Suffolk Academy directly to the Secretary of the Treasurer, saying that there is this segregationist academy called Nansemond-Suffolk Academy in Suffolk, Virginia, which is using state money to make an all-white school. This is unconstitutional. What are we going to do about it? So there are letters describing our school directly as part of this process in the congressional record of the United States.
Now, has this been brought up to the school? What is their reaction when it comes to, are they agreeing with you guys saying that they're a segregationist school? What are they saying when this is brought to their attention?
I've never heard the school describe itself as a segregationist academy. We've included all of that. Everything I just told you, we've included in the letter, in the original letter that we sent at the beginning of June. The conversation with the school has been minimal since then, and I have not heard them ever describe themselves as a segregationist academy.
And anyone can speak on this. Just after the letter was sent out, what did you guys think about the school's reaction? How has the school been responding to these anti-racist efforts that you guys have been putting forth?
Crickets, for the most part. I think when they do respond, it's a lot of lip service and a lot of pacifying. And for the most part, that doesn't help the situation. It just further proves the point that there's a problem. There's a systemic problem, there's a morality problem, and there's also just a culture at the school of is not even going to acknowledge anything.
Yeah. So Ashni, I see that you are a former NSA teacher, as well as obviously you went there as well. Can you kind of talk about your role? I feel like that's a very unique role. You being a student there, graduating there, and now wanting to go back to teach.
I went there. I became a teacher assistant there in the preschool. It was a difficult position to be in as a teacher assistant. I was one of the youngest, and I was also in a group where I was kind of the only one. There was one other Black teacher there, teacher assistant. We were not in roles as lead teachers. You don't see a lead teacher that is a person of color there. I started school there in 7th grade, and from 7th grade to 12th grade, I never had a Black teacher. I came from public school where I had a plethora of Black teachers and saw Black people in leadership positions, principals, assistant principals, even superintendents. So I came from that, and to go to NSA was a complete culture shock. And then to teach there, you have this, drawback where you want to be able to teach these kids and help these kids and have relationships with the kids, but there's this barrier because I don't look like them and I don't have all the same views as their parents, and some of the parents are uncomfortable with things. They'd never outright say it, but you can tell. They won't ask you certain questions, they'll ask someone else. They won't talk to you about certain things when it comes to their child, they'll talk to someone else. Oh, I'd rather talk to this person, although you're working directly with those children on a regular basis. It's just a level of comfort that you never experience with the parents, and you never build these relationships because I don't know if they have a fear, or in some cases it's just I don't like you because you look like you, So it's a wall that's really hard to break through in that culture and in that community.
So Kenny and Jay, I'm gonna just call you guys have you guys ever experienced, I guess, systemic racism while you were going to A? Can you kind of walk me through maybe some of the experience that negative or positive that you guys have had going to NSA as a Black student?
Well, this is Javon. When I went there, I started in 5th grade. That was 87, 88. My father was the band director there, so he was actually my only Black teacher I've ever had at NSA because he was my father and he was the band director. I really didn't see it while I was there. You know, thinking back on it, being older, I see some of the things as I mean, like for instance, I had one of my classmates tell me that she couldn't date me because I was Black. I brushed it off and, you know, didn't think nothing of it as a 6th grader. But now thinking back, I'm like, wow, that was kind of hurtful. Other things like that, I've only seen firsthand my father. I've seen students call my father the N-word a few times when he was teaching, but strong man, he just brushed it off. I mean, brushed it off to the point where he didn't want that to be the disturbance or anything going on. Other than that, I didn't personally see it physically like that.
Yeah, so I had a vastly different experience. My sister, who you talked with earlier, was exposed to racism at a very early age, being told at the age of 3 that one of her classmates couldn't play with her because she was colored. As for me, I distinctly remember in high school, there was a teacher, a white teacher, who walked by my lunch table. I was sitting with other Black students, and he said, "You all fought all those years just to segregate yourselves." This teacher was never reprimanded. He was never fired. There was no accountability whatsoever. So these kind of subtle microaggressions were quite normative. They were entrenched into the fabric and the culture of the school in such a way that, again, these behaviors were never seen to be reprehensible in any way. And so these kind of aggressions were, again, something that was pathologized to us to be a regular occurrence in many ways.
Yeah. And you guys, and again, anyone can speak on this. I know that you guys say that you are meeting weekly. Can you kind of talk about what Anti-Racist Saints, what you guys are doing right now? And why you guys are meeting weekly, and just the important work that you guys are doing right now, knowing that the school really, not really giving you the reaction that you guys want.
I've been really inspired by the group. Sorry, Sabrina, do you want to
Go
take
ahead.
that?
No, take that.
I've been really inspired by the way that the group passed the original letter. The goal of the original letter was to start a conversation with the school and to start to try to get it to start to change its policies. And we originally wanted a seat at the table for that change. The conversation that we first had with the school seemed to be leading towards that result. But we were, the day before the meeting that we were scheduled to have with the board, they canceled the meeting, and that has not been rescheduled. So in lieu of any actual seat at the table, we've needed to continue our efforts on our own time and on our own terms. And what that's looked like is we've continued to our outreach.
No. Sorry, you guys, everyone just paused on me. Can you guys hear me? Can you guys hear me?
Letter that we don't necessarily need the school to make happen, if that makes sense. So, for instance, with the scholarship part of it, there are things that we can do without NSA's help to get that going, to kind of get the wheels turning. We can do fundraisers. We can, come up with different plans to do those things where NSA hasn't given us a front door, but we can kind of find a side door into making that happen. I think we're building what could be the start of a program that's more of a mentorship program, where we can be the safe space for the current students as well that are students of color. or are in support of students of color, where they need someone to talk to. They're struggling at school with a subject and they don't feel comfortable talking to someone else. You have alumni that look like you and are supportive of you, where you can come to us. If you are having, a problem personally, we have people that are a part of our group that are mental health, in the mental health field. We have educators in our group. We have ministers in our group. So we have people that come from all different walks of life and all different facets that they're versed in, that we have the opportunity to help. And I think that's where NSA a lot of times falls short with all of their students. The Alumni Association as a whole they don't offer those sorts of things. And I feel like we have the opportunity to be that vehicle to offer those things to them.
Awesome. That's awesome. And I apologize, Wade, while you were speaking. I don't know what happened with my internet connection, but hopefully everything's still recording while you guys continue the conversation. So I apologize about that. Ashni, what you were talking about with having minority alums help tutor minority students there now. Jasmine and I were kind of talking about that before this group interview. And she also was saying that there are efforts now being done to secure scholarship opportunities.
Yeah.
Can you guys talk about that?
As far as the scholarship, I think as far as a point in the letter, we're really working towards making HBCUs more of a presence at the school. And one of the incentives that we've talked about in giving scholarships are for students of color who decide to go to HBCUs. In my experience, and I will say Jasmine had the same experience when we graduated, or were about to graduate, and we applied for colleges, we were asked why were we applying to HBCUs. Well, for us, it was history for us. It was legacy for us. It was, that's at one time, that's the only places we could go. And so we got into those schools, and there are HBCUs that are prestigious HBCUs within the radius of the school, and they don't invite them to college fairs. They don't invite them to career fairs. They don't invite them to do visits at the school. So what we learn about HBCUs is normally just from our families or from someone else that went there. It's not from the school where we're attending. And I think they're doing a disservice to the students of color, because at the end of the day, that is our history. And you're not even acknowledging that is a part of our history. And it's right here in Hampton Roads. You have Norfolk State, you have Hampton, and you have Virginia State right down the road. So they really are cutting out those schools and almost making it as if they are inferior to the Virginia Techs and the UVAs and the James Madisons, in the area. So I just feel like, with the scholarship, it will be great, as an incentive to say, hey, apply to these HBCUs. They're great schools that offer great things. I mean, NSU has one of the best nursing program. Hampton, I have a cousin that's in their PT program now, getting her doctorate. They have great programs at these different schools, and they're just not even acknowledging them. Yeah. So that is a way to get the HBCU's presence there and to incentivize them going to those schools.
Yeah, and you guys, I'm sure it's disappointing, frustrating. Is it hurtful that you guys are not getting the response that you would expect from the school?
It really is. We have, over 60 alums working on this effort. And so many of us are across state lines, working from abroad. We are putting so many hours into helping the school design an action plan on anti-racism. We've done a lot of critical thinking and work into this, and just to not even have the engagement from the school and recognizing the effort that we're putting forth and how motivated we are to help the school change, that is disheartening to us.
Do you believe that the school will ever change? Do you believe that one day they will come out and talk with you guys? Do you think they're going to change?
I mean, we had over 700 signatures on that letter. So the demand is there. It is up to the school to channel that demand and take into action. They are doing a disservice to themselves. They're going to feel left behind, frankly, if they don't initiate change. We understand that the COVID pandemic is inhibiting them to give this the priority it deserves. and they need to focus on reopening the schools, but this is also a priority that they need to show that they have some type of timeline, some type of action plan in place, and they are going to address this going forward.
And Sabrina, we've been talking and you said that the school at one point actually blocked you guys from viewing anything. What was that, on social media? Can you talk about that?
We have a pretty strong social media presence. We have an Instagram called Black at NSA and a Facebook page where we post memoirs from Black and Brown students on their experiences at NSA. Last week, we were blocked from NSA's social media channels, that we could not view their Instagrams or Facebooks any longer. And so that was a huge misstep, and we felt that that was a huge just insult, that they wouldn't block out the voices of Black and Brown students, their own students, that they weren't hearing their stories. And so there was a lot of public outrage for that, and they eventually unblocked us. And so I'm not sure whose decision that was, but that was a really big insult to our cause and our effort.
If I may, it almost seems as though the academy is complicit with where they are in terms of race relations and trying to restructure curriculum and revitalize the culture as well. So the block was emblematic of something that is structurally inept about NSA. And that's one of the things that we're also hoping to change, in addition to making this an anti-racist institution. That also has to do not only with the policies and procedures, but the overall ethos of the academy, right? The way that they even engage the idea of Blackness in and of itself, right? It's uncomfortable, it's taboo, but it's necessary for social transformation and change. And I think that's one of the things that's frustrating us all the more, is that not only do we not have a seat at the table, there is not even a willingness to engage in critical discourse about race and race relations and how that manifests itself in the academy.
Yeah. I mean, if you guys feel like I missed anything that anyone wants to touch on, just your biggest hope coming out of airing this story, your biggest hope coming out of writing the letter, speaking up, speaking out. If anyone wants to just take it, anyone wants to, anything that you think I missed that you really feel is important for the public to know.
I think it's important that with COVID happening, a lot of people are at home. And a lot of people are at home listening to different views about what's going on the news. And I don't think NSA is aware or even cares about the fact that they need to be prepared for these different views to come into the school. These students are going to hear things from mom and dad and different grandparents that may not make things comfortable when they come back, and especially in the upper grades. So when they come back to school, the guidance counselors need to be prepared. Administration needs to be prepared, because some hard conversations are going to be had in these history classes and these English classes when you bring forth different literature. When students say certain things to other students, there's going to be a whole new array of insults that are going to come out. And students of color needs to feel safe. And students that are not students of color who have these, combating views need to be educated. And NSA is not prepared for that at all.
I think that a school is a student's first experience of public life, and to not give a student the ability to understand racial consciousness, to understand their own history, to challenge their own biases, it does a disservice to them that they will spend, and I can speak to this, decades unlearning. So as an educational institution, I think it's incumbent upon the school to do the work of giving students the tools to navigate public life. And that includes understanding themselves and their own racial consciousness. But it also means letting them learn about their history, where they came from, and allowing the school to change so that the students can see it's possible to make change.
Yeah, that was great. Anybody else? Anything that you think I missed? Anything that you want to add and touch on?
In general, this movement that this country is going through, we've reached an inflection point, and it is up to the community to hold up local institutions to making the change and keeping them accountable to addressing systemic racism.
And to Sabrina's point, this didn't come up, but we have been in conversation with other independent schools, namely Cape Henry Collegiate, Norfolk Collegiate, as well as Norfolk Academy. We know that there are similar efforts ongoing at those institutions as well. So to what Sabrina said, this is a national movement that is taking place, and we've localized our efforts on NSA. And so we are optimistic that change will happen, not only at NSA, but across the Hampton Roads area and a number of private and independent schools as well.